we've got to get together on this, and we will do that. Are there any there are IT guys out there? I think, sir, you know some IT. Anyone else know any IT by hands? A little bit server stuff? Okay, do you guys know what an iDRAC card is in a Dell server, or a remote management card? Those cards are added to servers so you can connect in remotely over the network to pretend to be in front of it. So you could type on the keyboard remotely. You could see the screen remotely from the other side of the world. You could turn the server on and off. You could change data on the hard drive. Do you know that those cards are actually in the build sheets for your voting system servers? And can you think of any reason why those should be on something that's supposed to be absolutely secure?
I can, but it's really bad.
I agree. I think though maybe just not order them for the server. And then what I would do is I would epoxy the connector on the motherboard that allows you to plug one in. In fact, maybe these systems should all be sent to a company or an organization that actually hardens the systems before they're allowed to be used. That might be a good idea if we even continue using them, which I think is a horrible idea.
I was thinking we should send them to Burning Man.
We have another question here. Hold on, we got a mic coming for you.
Yes, could you just give me what the name of that card was again? That company?
iDRAC.
iDRAC, I-D-R-A-C. And that's just what Dell uses, and I believe that one of the big voting systems only uses Dell servers. So, and they're great cards. And I use them all the time. But I would never, ever put one on a voting system. And other manufacturers have different names for them, but basically it's a remote access card.
And if you find that those are on the voting systems in your state, go to that site, look up CVE, Charlie Victor Echo, and look up the vulnerabilities listed for the iDRAC card, and then ask your state or county officials whether all the patches are installed that will fix the vulnerabilities to them.
The known vulnerabilities.
That's right, the known vulnerabilities.
No. And one of the things that I don't think's been really explicitly said, and all the techie people know, but maybe others don't, that when you have something that has one of these CVEs that's been reported, and you've got all the information on the vulnerability, there are standard tools that are used by people that do pen testing. Like a common one is called Metasploit. It's very easy to obtain. They have pre-configured exploits for these vulnerabilities that nobody even needs to know how to program. They just need to learn how to use that application.
It's like you can download it, and it's a built-in hack. Like you download it, it's a toolkit. Download, you run it, and it executes all this and hacks it for you.
Yeah.
You don't even have to be a hacker to use this stuff.
Right. So if you don't go and patch the vulnerabilities once they're already known and out in the open, these are made for people who are doing good to go out and make sure that their systems don't respond to these type of intrusion requests. But they're there to actually be used if we have a system that they're there to be used by anyone if the system's known to have those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, a lot of people, right? A lot of people tell you your voting systems are secure. Make them show you. Make them show you. Questions?
While we're getting a mic to you. Oh, hold on. We got a question over here.
Thank you. I'm wondering, you're putting out a lot of wonderful technical information. You folks have been living and breathing this stuff. For a lot of us, this is new, as far as in hearing the totality of the realm of information technology that we're talking about that needs to be addressed in each state. I'm wondering if you got a lot to do already, I know, but I wonder if it might be too much that somewhere in what you're doing for us so beautifully, if you might also consider making like a list of like the top 10 questions we as either people who are aspiring like to run for Congress or or the questions we should ask the people who are already state reps or state senators or something like that we should ask that has a precision to it that even in a way that narrows down to what it is you're trying to point out, that there's no transparency in the voting, but that would be tremendously helpful because there's just a lot of, you've gone through a lot of elements here, but to put it in a, sort of a way that narrows down to the point that the state's election machinery needs to be either, made transparent or it's already known to be fraudulent. The key thing that if we asked a question, when we got the answer to it, we know something is fraudulent. But those questions leading to that conclusion and coming down like this would be very helpful if somebody could, if you guys put your heads together and put something like that together, the list of the top 10 questions that really narrows it down that you got problems.
Like a guide for public officials to ensure the security of their elections?
Yeah, we are working on it.
Yeah.
Something that would help us, like I said, either running for office to counter the pushback that we're going to get from making the questions and give us another line of questioning that helps reveal them as being either they're covering it up or they're ignorant of how this thing is supposed to operate.
Yeah.
Understood.
I do know of an organization that is actually doing that right now, that is putting that together. And so we'll find a way to get everyone's contact information. If that's something you are interested in, please make sure you come up to me and ask me. I'll get your contact information and we'll hook you up with that.
And I don't know if this is going on or not, but I think you guys are having a meeting later for like the legislator support kind of thing. It might be really cool. I mean, I just thought about this after listening to you say that. Ask if they can have a techie question section where if you guys in that group, in that group that's more comfortable, you can ask a tech question and pass it along to somebody that'll give you an honest answer.
Yep, we can definitely do that. A consultant to call. Got it. Yeah, we can do that. I would be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
Y'all mentioned some cyber vendor protection companies, network security companies previously. Have y'all heard of the company Kaspersky? And has that name come up in any of this stuff?
I have not heard it, no.
What is it? What is
Kaspersky?
Espers?
Kaspersky?
Kaspersky, no.
Kaspersky?
I have not heard. No. Oh, Kaspersky, yes, of course.
Kaspersky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the question about Kaspersky?
No, I understand they were potentially implicated in some election issues around the United States. I was curious if y'all had heard anything about that.
Maybe?
I have not yet, but they could be. Yeah, it accidentally can happen, right? So if someone hacked one of let's say an antivirus company, and they embedded a virus in the antivirus software, that could then get easily distributed to a bunch of other companies that use this antivirus software, and it might actually do the opposite without the company even knowing. And that wouldn't be on Kaspersky, other than they allowed it to happen. But it's a frightening thing, and it does happen and has happened. Not necessarily to Kaspersky, but I've seen it happen to other companies. Yeah. That's a good concern. Is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for what you're doing here. I really appreciate it. I wanted to follow up on his question because as a constituent, not a politician, I want to know what intelligent questions to ask or to feed the politicians so they can ask the election board officials.
We are putting that together as well.
That be for everybody, not just for those who are elected into office.
Yeah, we'll have a panel a little bit later today that's going to discuss steps going forward. What action can people take for different groups? Yeah.
I just want to say that Patrick Colbeck has like a talking points card that he passes around. It is very informative. It kind of helps people like us that don't know what we're talking about to be able to speak confidently.
It's beautiful. Very well done. There's a whole stack in the mock elections room for everybody to go get one. Very
and his website is what? Let'sfixstuff. Is it org? .org. Let'sfixstuff.org is Pat's website. Brilliant site, brilliant man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And another thing I thought about in network cards, and this thing we found out years ago, you can buy these cards for your servers, and a company like Intel might make them. There are knockoff companies in other countries that some of them start with C that will make the same card. It's a clone of the real card, and that chipset on there has a backdoor in it. So if you were to take that card and put it in your server, and you found it on eBay at a good price,
it's much more affordable.
It's much more affordable. So you might put that in your server. Well, that card has a backdoor, and if that affordable card you bought and you put in your server and you connected your server into the network, that could be a backdoor that allows everyone right behind a firewall right into your network. There are a million ways to hack a network, and these companies are making these clone chips. I'll give you a good example, one that I experienced. A customer of ours wanted a surveillance system for their office, and we had a couple different options for them. We had a mid-grade, a low-grade, a high-grade system, and the low-grade was really cheap, again, made in a place that starts with a C.
Canada.
Maybe not Canada. It was less letters than Canada. But anyway,
Cuba?
I never recommend going with a cheap solution, but they insisted on going with a cheap solution. So we put it in for them. And everything was fine for a couple of months, and all of a sudden their network started acting strangely. And they called me and say, our internet's really slow. We can't figure out why. Our emails are slow, our internet's slow. And so we went in and I started packet sniffing their network to see what is going on. And I also noticed their bandwidth utilization, which means the amount of internet data they were taking in and going out was really, really high, much higher than it normally was. So we started tracing the network, and I found out all this extra traffic in and out was coming from this one network video recorder, this very cheap surveillance system we put in for them. Ton of traffic, and we looked at the IPs, and those IPs went back to China. It was sending a ton of information in and out to and from China. And we immediately unplugged the thing and threw it in the garbage and replaced it with an American-made system and have not had a problem since. Anything you put in can have backdoors in it.
Not our voting systems. Those are the most secure ever. Right?
Yes.
Certified by the same people who are protecting Colonial Pipeline and JBS Foods.
It's me again, sorry. I did this after I had my lawsuit against Secretary of State Kate Brown in Oregon in 2012 to try to prevent her from rigging the 2012 elections by ordering all her county elections directors not to follow state election law and not to destroy the leftover unused ballots promptly at 8 o'clock on election night as law dictated. I tracked the ordering of the ballots from this ballot printing company I keep talking about. And in Washington County, I have documented proof. I just walked in there and asked them to see their invoices for printing the ballot. Before that, I got a phone call and I got verification that they'd ordered. Okay, there's three numbers I want you to remember. 292,000 registered voters. They ordered 338,000 ballots be printed from this company. The company waited until after 2012, until the first or second day of 2013, to bill them for 360,000 ballots. My suggestion is that those people out there interested to go to your county elections, ask them for the production order for how many ballots they ordered, and get a copy of the receipt of from the printing of the ballots that they were charged in that county elections. That's 68,000 more ballots that were printed than they had registered voters. Big problem.
Okay?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Just put that anywhere. So not only how many ballots did they order, but how many printing machines did they have for ballots locally? Who else had printing machines for those ballots locally? Who else had access to special ballot paper? All of that.
Yeah.
Those are really important questions.
Questions about when they mail them out, where do they get returned if they don't get delivered? Who actually gets the return value? I was just going to say that.
She's saying the same company does the printing, the programming, and the mailing of the ballots.
Yep, I was just going to say, even in the state that I voted in that wasn't all mailing, I did some research on who printed our ballots for mail-in ballots, and they were also the representative that did the programming of the cards for the voting machine.
Yeah. This is our most sacred right. If it's not safe and secure, if it's not free and fair, we don't have a country.
We have to wrap this up. Do you have a really quick one?
I have a brief question I'll park out to you. If we do not get this fixed before 2022, I fear what we are doing is giving a murderer sorry about that. We're giving a murderer basically our investigative techniques. It won't look the same in 2022 because they're going to clean this up. Would you comment on that, please? And thank you.
They're going to make changes, absolutely, because now they know where we caught them, and now they're going to do something different. So we absolutely have to fix this right now. Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Colonel Retired John Mills. We have put together a program. We're calling it the FOIA File, Sue, and Settle Program, FS2. This whole program is designed to give the citizen a model for how they can reassert themselves at the county level in the election process. We learned several hard lessons in the November 2020 election. We must reassert ourselves at the county level if we are to ensure free and fair elections.
The November 2020 election was temporarily lost at the state and county level. There was a pervasive assumption that developed among the citizens that someone else was taking care of the election process. Well, someone else is taking care of it, and it didn't end well.
6 states sent their certified votes under protest. Vice President Pence had an opportunity to request clarification, and he did not. And the rest is history.
The November 2020 election taught us some tough lessons that we have significant issues in our election process. But you have to realize that voting in the United States is substantially rooted at the county and state level. And if you read your U.S. Constitution, Article 2, you will find that explicitly stated.
Therefore, for us to resolve a lot of election integrity issues, we need to prepare, integrate, organize, and then focus on those issues within your own county.
You know, when we pulled together the Every Legal Vote Coalition, one thing became obvious. Elections are done at the local level, at least for now. And that's important because you at the local level can make an enormous difference. Handful of people across this nation in the key jurisdictions could have swung the election one direction or the other. That's how important the local is, and that's why we target the local when we're helping reform elections and solve these problems.
The FS2 program is a model on how we can reassert ourselves at the county level.
The FOIA, File, Sue, and Settle program, FS2, has been established to give patriots in all counties a model to have an impact at the county level.
The most important thing to take away from this is that the federal government is created by the states. And so that's why the states are the ones that are controlling of our federal elections. It's executed by our counties, and the best mechanism for we the people to apply the necessary pressure to remedy any issues that may or may not have occurred or will occur with our federal elections is to apply the maximum scrutiny, pressure, and oversight on the 3,143 counties in our union.
What is better, getting angry or getting involved? By all means, please get involved and be a part of the solution.
For years, the far progressive left has used lawfare. They've used this sue and settle concept, and we've been bound by agreements from judges that we didn't elect that have determined what our future is like. But the good news is the law works both ways. And the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, file, sue, and settle, is an unbelievable way that we can establish our constitutional rights. We can learn what government's doing, we can protect those rights, and we can protect our elections. This is one opportunity that we've got to take advantage of. This is one way that we can, as individuals at the local level, fight back and maintain sound, fair elections.
For the FS2 program, I've assembled just a wonderful group of colleagues. We are all passionate about seeing transparent and fair elections in our county, in our state, and in our country. We're average citizens, but we all have a shared vision of fair, transparent elections.
FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, is all about establishing information dominance.
Why must you know your county and state election officials? And how do I contact them?
The specific actions that each citizen can do to be involved in this election integrity is to, first of all, identify who their election officials are, get to know them, be involved, volunteer, be a part of the process.
It's very important to personalize your interaction with your county and local officials. So it's very easy to email them, but it's a lot better to pick up the phone so that they hear your voice. You know, they're responsible for answering your questions. They are the interpreters of the law and the process. And so if you contact them and they hear your voice and they know who you are, you can hear their inflections, you can hear them respond, and sure, after that, you can start emailing a bit. You also have to realize that they have a duty to answer your question. So they have a duty to be transparent and to share the information that they have with you. But don't treat them as the enemy, because that can get you in a conflicting situation and make matters worse. So we want to be cooperative, and it's a much better approach in getting the information that you're desiring.
Why is it important for me to know the numbers, the process, and the issues for my precinct, county, and state?
What are the key metrics for voting in my precinct, county, and state? And why is it important to know the numbers, the process, and the issues for my precinct, county, and state?
Any successful organization knows that qualitative and quantitative measurements and benchmarks are necessary.
When speaking with an elected official or someone who's not elected, maybe just has a position of importance at your county level or state level, it's very important to establish credibility. Because if they see that you have a decisive understanding of the situation, maybe the numbers that you're asking about, they're much less likely to disregard you.
What is FOIA? Why is FOIA important? How do I use the FOIA?
FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act. It is from 5 U.S. Code.
Sometimes you will hear it referred to as a public records request. There are federal laws and state laws that allow citizens to request documents through a FOIA that will help the citizen to understand the documents and records that government uses to make decisions. A record is a written or electronic document a record is not equipment.
Here are some do's and don'ts.
Keep in mind when you're doing a FOIA, make sure that you're directing it to the appropriate office. It's very specific and surgical. Be sure to avoid being accusatory and aggressive. Be stern, professional, but yet appropriate for the office that you're interacting with. Be sure that it's not too broad nor too narrow in scope, so that you can gain access to the information and maybe the ancillary information that you're trying to obtain.
In summary of the FOIA phase of FS2, there's 3 key steps that we want you to walk away with. First, know your county election officials and other related county officials, elected or appointed, that are involved in the election process. 2, know the numbers and the process for the election in your precinct, county, and state. Know those numbers and know those numbers well. And third, know the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act request. Know the art of the FOIA, how to successfully use the FOIA to obtain the information you need. FOIA, it's all about establishing information dominance.
File. This is where we shape the situation for action.
What should I do with all the information I collect?
Do I have the right information to take action?
Do we have enough information on the right topics?
Make sure you collect the documents in an organized and logical fashion, and that you understand the significance of the documents.
Knowledge of election statistics should be obvious and intuitive, but people who should know these numbers don't.
Most states and counties should have FOIA officers. Identify them, get to know them, build relationship with them, and perhaps they could help you with your FOIA requests. Try to identify resources and money from outside interest groups to the states and counties pertaining to the election process.
Who runs elections in the United States? How can I find my state laws on elections? I'm not a lawyer, and these are legal matters. How can I possibly understand what to do?
How can this information be shaped into action? And how can I seek a forensic audit in my county or state?
Federal elections are governed essentially by the states. And subordinate to that, they're executed by the 3,143 counties and county equivalents throughout our country.
Therefore, the related to city or county or state or your own country, you are the owner of the process and you must get involved.
So one thing to read up on, again by state, is to read up on the election laws of your respective states. For example, in Virginia, the election law is found in Virginia Administrative Code 24-2.
Find your code, print it out, read it, and familiarize yourself intensely with that, and you will be the expert on your elections in your state.
Also take a look and see what the rules and procedures are at the county level, and by knowing those rules, you can then identify where the county and state officials deviated from those laws to then push for more scrutiny of their activity.
Forensic audits should include hand counting votes on the ballot and optical scanning to determine the validity of the ballot.
What is the state circuit court? How do I contact them, and what can they do?
Your job is to establish a professional relationship with the state circuit court judges.
County clerks and judges, they work for you, and often they will be responsive and helpful if you treat them in a professional and respectful manner.
While most people know who their state legislators are and maybe executive branch members, most people do not know who their judges are. That's something that we need to change. So at the circuit level, for example, in Virginia and in other states where you may have the lower level court which has jurisdiction over election laws, you need to start learning who those individuals are and who sits on those benches.
There are differences between states. Some states elect their judges. Some states appoint their judges.
In summary, for the second phase of FS2, the file phase, these are the three key takeaways we want you to use and apply in your county. First, understand and assess. Assess all of the information you have collected. Second, understand your state and county voting laws. Know the law, know how to find it, read it, understand it. Third, understand your state circuit court system. This is going to become very important in the next phase, but it's important you understand the actual judges and the circuit court system. File, it's all about shaping the situation for action.
Sue, this is where we apply decisive force on the correct target.
How do I seek a conversation with a judge?
Am I even allowed to talk to a judge? What should I ask a judge?
I really think we have become too cautious as believers in being involved in some of the processes of our community. One of those being in the matter of making sure that our officials are accountable, especially in the matter of elections. Election officials, judges, these are approachable people.
You know, sometimes we normal average Americans are afraid to talk to a judge. I mean, we put them on a pedestal and we say, you know, oh, I can't interfere. I can't talk to them. Judges are people too. And they have relationships, and their relationships color their thinking in so many different ways. So one of the things you can do is actually reach out and have a conversation with the judge.
The first step in communicating with the judge is to contact the county clerk's office. For the most part, the county clerk's office staff all work for the judge, and they will provide you the guidance you need in order to calendar an appointment with the appropriate judge.
Now understand, if you pick a judge that's actually going to be active in the case, they may have to recuse themselves at some point or so forth. So you've got to pick carefully.
The purpose of the meeting with the magistrate is to gain rapport, guidance, and learning points. It is the same relationship you want to have with the election committee officials, the same relationship you want to have with the county staff. They are not the enemy. They are there to provide the information you need for a transparent process.
One topic to raise with the judge is the predicate to assert audits of the voting machines and ballots. Do have qualitative and quantitative logic behind the basis of these audits. It is unlikely that the judge will be harsh, terse, and dismissive to you. But if they are, it is a flag that is worth investigating.
There may be election issues in your county. By being prepared and informed, this will impress election officials.
So after your initial meeting with the county judges, you find out something is wrong. There's wrongdoing going on. Make sure to follow up with second meeting, but this time bring additional officials who's involved in this process so we can take the next steps.
This is an opportunity for you to get, right now you found the target, you found the evidence, now what do you do about it to hold them accountable or to take the next step? That's where you can go get some good advice and information from your new friend who's a judge.
What is arbitration? What is mediation? Who else should I be bringing to this conversation?
If you successfully establish a professional relationship, the judge will likely either suggest mediation or arbitration.
Many counties and states require one or both of these procedures as a voluntary or mandatory step before more formal legal proceedings.
So the question is, do I have a choice of mediation or arbitration? Well, that is county dependent. And it is ruled by law. So you have to understand the law of your county, of your state, if it exists. If it does not exist, then your only remedy is to take the matter before the courts.
In either case, you, the private citizen, can do this. Assert yourself and ensure that election integrity is maintained. For much of this process, you don't even necessarily need a lawyer. You can assert yourself and do this.
What we learned from the 2020 election is that the citizens must be involved with the electoral process. The assumption that somebody else is taking care of it is correct. However, they may not be doing it correctly.
What happens if mediation and/or arbitration doesn't work? I tried this and I felt outmaneuvered by the mini swamp. What do? The parties I tried to bring in did not cooperate and would not participate. What are my options?
This is now entering into lawfare, what some groups have been waging against Americans since the 1970s.
One of the amazing things that our laws allow. In 1871, there was an act passed called the KKK Act, or the Civil Rights Act of 1871. It was targeting the Ku Klux Klan that had been denying black men their right to vote, particularly in states like South Carolina, where the black men outnumbered the white men, and they really had rigged the election. The KKK Act gave a civil response so that you could sue in civil court any two or more people conspiring to prevent you from having your vote count.
This is where legal counsel may be necessary. Seek hungry lawyers willing to work on contingency.
We're seeking two things. First, it's just the right thing to do.
Second, is possible punitive damages for misapplication of the law by these officials.
Frame this as civil rights and equal protection issues.
These can be civil or criminal suits, or possibly both.
For the third step in the FS2 process, the sue step, here are the three key takeaways we want you to use and apply in your county and state. First, seek a conversation with a judge. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. Reach out to a judge. Second, engage in mediation and/or arbitration. This is very possibly a required step, but even if it isn't, it is a useful tool to seek remedy. And third, finally, if you need to, move toward formal court action to obtain remedy. You may need a lawyer for this part. Sue. It's all about applying the right force on the right target to seek remedy and action.
Settle. This is where we close the deal, reset, and move on to the next target.
Do we have to go to a complete court battle?
Doesn't this cost a lot of money?
Do I need a lawyer at this time?
Legal counsel may be necessary. You may, though, simultaneously be able to make a case for yourself if you demonstrate the knowledge of the process, wrongful act, and the remedy you seek. Many judges are very open to citizens and citizen-led lawsuits if they demonstrate appropriate knowledge of the predicate of the argument, law, and implementing regulations.
By you doing the heavy lifting and by establishing a logical case, this will attract lawyers who will work with you on contingency basis.
By advancing a formal case, the goal is not to create a long, drawn-out legal battle, but rather to bring county and state officials to the settlement table.
This is about settling on a reasonable remedy as fast as possible.
Try partnering with your county against your state, or your state against your county, or your state against the federal government. Get them to hold each other accountable.
One of the big challenges that you're going to have when you start this procedure is you need to know the outcome you want. And you've got to be very precise in this, because that's the target you're aiming towards. Sure, you can find out that there was some kind of irregularity or fraud or some malfeasance that took place. But what is the remedy that you're seeking? And you need to plan that out in advance. That's something else you can talk to the judge about. It's something you ought to sit down and say, what would fix this problem?
Follow through is key. One large group recently had 2 great victories, but they failed to follow through and ensure that the states and the counties followed the court-directed actions.
How do I know whether I've been effective? Who should I collaborate with to share results?
Now that you've completed the 4-step process, you need to be the hammer by creating the scorecard for each individual that was part of that process. And what I mean by that is each of the government officials at the county and state level need to be graded.
Red, yellow, and green scorecards are very effective at holding election officials accountable.
Do media events. Tell your story. Share your findings, accomplishments, and next steps. First suggestion, take a little bit of a break and recharge. Ensure you're focusing on your spiritual, family, and personal fitness.
But commit to reconvene. Don't lose momentum.
And no matter how successful we may be, success is not permanent. Complacency can set in.
Our opponent is a ravenous lion looking to destroy and corrupt our incredible republic. We must be vigilant.
For the 4th step in the FS2 program, settle, here are the 3 key takeaways we want you to use and apply in your county. First, seek settlement and remedy. We're not trying to conduct a protracted legal battle. Second, assess results to date. Third, reset and move on to the next target. Settle. It's all about closing the deal, assessing results, and moving on to the next target.
One of the challenges that we have is the balance. We need individuals across the country to stand up for their legal rights and to really demand that the elections be free and fair. And that's kind of creating brush fires all across the country, because there are those who are enemies of our nation, and they really want to come together as a collective and squash any dissent.
Election integrity is important and foundational to our incredible liberal democratic republic.
I think it is essential that we have confidence that our elections are guided by and with integrity. That's just not an elected or an appointed official's responsibility. That's the responsibility of we the people.
The goal here is to make certain that every legal vote counts. This is nonpartisan. We want every legal voter to express their preference in an election. But those that might be trying to rig the election in some way, or votes that should not be counted, shouldn't count. Every legal vote should determine the outcome of any election.
Holding our county and state officials accountable is foundational to election integrity.
You're the person who must do this. There is no one else.
In summary, the FS2 program consists of 4 steps: FOIA, file, sue, and settle. We hope that this helps you as you organize, train, and equip at the county level to reassert yourselves in the election process. The next steps for you are: understand everything about the election process. Compare your findings with the FS2 principles. Organize and create a plan of action. Take action. Apply your findings and actions not only for elections, but this can also apply for related matters such as a local or county school board. Persist, prevail, and reassert. You could contact us at the information provided on your screen.
Okay, so we can turn that. Please turn that down. So this video is an example of what we're collecting and collating to put in the toolboxes for you guys to take home back to your counties and your precincts, and also to let you know that there are more people in this strife than just us. So Colonel John Mills, a brother of mine, as a matter of fact, Ivan Rakeland was on the video. He's here. He's here somewhere. Ivan, come on up, please. Yeah, and the fact is, as I said in the opening, this is people who want to protect our civil rights. This is it's not black, white, Hispanic, Asian. This is the American people, and it is apolitical. I mean, it is civil rights. And just to let you know, there are organizations all around the country to plug in wherever you are. John and these guys happen to be in Virginia. We have a Saturday call that we all try to get on to pass what's happening here, what's there. So there's some cross-leveling across the states of what are the best practices. How are you guys doing this in this state? And I think that's the huge value of this meeting, because I know all you legislators have exchanged contact information, and hopefully you will create the ability to cross-communicate. Mark and I are working with a group of secretaries of states and governors who are running for office, and one of the things that they want to learn about is election integrity. And Mark and I, and Ivan probably too, we could stand up here for 8 hours straight with no notes and talk about this election integrity, the history, the linkage, the mechanics. And what you guys saw on this video and the one right before it really focuses the need to get people involved at the local level and reach out, find attorneys, find your local cyber guys, find somebody to create an ad hoc team like we were forced to in early November. So, Ivan, you want to say a couple of words about the organization? And this is, again, that video is going to be in the toolbox that you're going to get later this afternoon to go out and be able to do those exact things. FOIA, legal. There is a national legal strategy. It's focused on legislative subpoenas followed by lawsuit that would kind of open and make the process go more rapidly. But Ivan, you got to take a couple minutes and say words.
Appreciate it, Phil. Yeah. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Good? All right. So thanks for having me here. As you said before, Phil, National Election Integrity Association, just launched by John Mills, retired colonel. Seems like veterans. It's a trend, right? We're trying to save this country, and you patriots are also going to guarantee that. So what we're doing is providing, like you said, a toolbox at the county level. We're talking already at the state level with the legislators, but in the judicial level. But at the county level, just to frame it nationally, Seth Keshel has done an amazing job with giving an overview of all 3,143 counties and county equivalents throughout the country. Those are the entities that execute our elections, right? So that's where we need to identify to make sure that they're being run properly. That's where the raw data starts, and we need to make sure that the chain of custody of information is done in the most pristine manner as possible, so that by the time it gets to the Secretary of State, there's no change. And then those legislators are 100% confident that their election law was followed to the T, so that when they decide which electors to transmit in the case of a federal election for a president are 100% accurate and correct. So I'll close with this. This will be real brief. Counties is where it's at. And the way you can do it is you do a FOIA or an open records request if you're in Georgia. Identify counties that are willing to cooperate in this transparency, and election integrity, identify if there's potential manipulation that occurred in the machines. And if one machine is found to be manipulated, that may apply nationally to the same company's machines. And there are different companies out there. That's all I got. Thank you.
So something important that Ivan said is focus at the county level. There are a lot of states who are trying to consolidate the voting power at the Secretary of State. Any system where there's a single point of failure is going to fail singularly badly. So get those county organizations, the county sheriff and the county judge, have that authority, and that is definitely an area that the state legislatures need to ensure that is codified and clear and bulletproof and enforced. So that drives the authority down to the counties, and those are closest to the people. That's why they're there.
And the main focus here is to guarantee what Chris Krebs said. We want to make sure that what he said, that this was the freest, fairest election in the history of humanity, holds true. And if accidentally it flips the presidency, the Senate control, and the House control in that process, well, so be it.
Thanks, Ivan. So, Mark and I just wanted to recap, or first, there were some questions about the announcement that I made earlier, the invocation of the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. Again, those are all validated. That is a standard practice, PPD 21 and a lot of other documents that authorize that. There were some people said, well, there was a virus. No, there were no viruses. The data set that was released to the teams on the first day and whatever was the second day, those were all reviewed, scrubbed. What a poison pill could be is a file embedded, deeply embedded in some of the data that could be anything from personally identifiable information. It could be anything that's malicious that would give cause for law enforcement interdiction. So that's the warning that we got, and that was the information that we got. So we decided to act with prudence rather than going forward. And Mark is on the team that was literally going line by line of this information and validating, what was released to the green. So there was no viruses, there was nothing else, there was nothing that was released that was not, that was unsafe or anything else. We just couldn't validate that a bigger chunk of data release did not have anything malicious in it. So Mark's got an update, and we had a couple of folks that had been working on this MESA data, and again, the MESA data is not what we were talking about. The MESA data was publicly available, and that's why we're still working to analyze it. And I know Mark's spent a little bit more time going through it.
So I spent some time yesterday going through quite a bit of it. I have been up on stage quite a bit. And I have not been able to spend as much time as some of the guys in the back room have. So I would love to hear from anyone that has any comments that has been in the back room actually looking over this data. And I may have some questions about it.
I think one of our members, John, if you would just tell us a little bit about your background and your certifications and your particular area of expertise.
Thanks. I'm Doug Gould. I'm from Eastern North Carolina.
Hold it a little bit closer. There we go.
And I'm the, okay, there we go. We can hear me now. I'm Doug Gould. I'm from Eastern North Carolina. I'm currently the Chief Technical Officer for Cyber Team US. I was the Chief Cybersecurity Strategist for AT&T, Chief Security Officer for the World Institute for Security Enhancement. I've been doing this about 40 years. I've got too many certifications to list. CISSP, Certified Anti-Terrorism, and so forth. I've been working with the team here, looking at all the data. And I think one of the things that is perhaps a missed expectation that I want to explain to everyone, and I'll do that by using some analogies. Suppose this morning I had driven into the parking lot and I hit a bump and left an oil slick all the way across the parking lot, and there are all kinds of metal parts driven all over the parking lot. And I call the garage, and the guy comes out, and I say, I want my car fixed. And he says, okay, and I say, in 5 minutes. Now, we all know that's an unrealistic expectation, but when it comes to some of this technical stuff, you may not fully appreciate it. So we're looking at the data from one computer. It's 20 gigabytes. I mean, I'd probably pile the stage this full with books all the way across and not cover 20 gigabytes worth of information. And then I ask you to read it in 3 days? Not going to happen. In a forensic investigation, I would tell you the absolute minimum is 3.5 weeks. Bring me the data. Don't even talk to me for 3.5 weeks. It's going to take that long to go through it.
And how many people would that entail, a team?
2, 3, 4, 5, it depends. So the part of the process is that we're looking for details. I got a computer, there's something that's suspected to be wrong with it, and I don't know what's wrong. I don't know how it was done, and I don't know what to look for. So I'm going to start to look for things that are strange. The first thing I look at is all the dates of all the files and see when things were done. Help me narrow it down to a scope. Then I look at files. I look things that are unusual. Perfect example. Last night I was looking at the Mesa County data, and one of the programs popped up and said, oh, look, here's some email addresses, and they're foreign email addresses. Well, there's only a dozen of them. It took me 3 hours to verify that they were worthless. They're meaningless. They're not relevant to anything. There was no email on the machine that I could determine in that time, and those addresses were a false flag. So we're going to find little rabbit holes that we get dragged down, and that's part of the process. But we have to look at everything. And so part of the message is, you know, while today I can't tell you that I have something that's conclusive, I can neither prove that it's right or prove that it's wrong. That's now. It's very, very, very early. It's kind of like if I took the novel War and Peace and I've read the table of contents. And that's all I've done. So we need more time. It's going to be a lot of work. It's very technical. But we're working on it. And I think one of the good things here is we got a team together, a team of people together. And we're working together. We've established those relationships. We've got the initial trust going. And there will be some answers at some point in the future.
John, so for legislators who might be, or county officials who might be looking to find a local cyber team, how would they find the right people with the right certifications? I know you happen to have the piece of software, the piece of $6,000 software that was useful in doing this. Just by luck, you happen to have it, so you're in the catbird seat. And then how much would they expect to pay for 3.5 weeks for a team of you guys working on one of these problem sets?
For each of their systems.
Great answer,
Yeah.
A great question. So Phil is right. I brought with me an entire forensic kit. That kit goes for about $6,000. And then you need probably 2 months of training to know how to use it. It's not a matter of just having forensic software. I've got an operating system. The computer has an operating system. This one, for our voting machines, it's Windows for most of them. You need to be a Windows expert. I need to be able to look at the registry of the computer and tell if something's wrong. And nobody's an expert on everything. I am probably going to find something that has to do with a voting machine that I have to call somebody else to say, hey, is this thing legitimate? Is it doing what I think it's doing, or isn't it? But you need the training in networking, the training on computing, the training in programming, the training in operating systems, the training in investigative skills, and the training in forensics, all of that. When you go to look for an expert, you want to look for some credentials. There's a fairly common one called Certified Information Systems Security Professional, CISSP. It's a board certification exam. The education is equivalent to, I'd say, 2/3 of a graduate school education. People who have the CISSP credential know what they're talking about. That's an easy way to filter it. Find somebody in a Fortune 100 company who's a chief security officer and ask them. You can look for references and so forth. So the other half of that is it's fairly expensive. So when I was doing this as an independent consultant about 10 years ago, people would bring me forensic cases, and I told them $350 an hour. And that was a competitive rate. I was pushing people out the door. It's very expensive, but the equipment's expensive. The certifications are expensive, and they have to be maintained. Last year's software doesn't cut the mustard for this year, and for those of us who do this, we got to buy the stuff every year. So it's expensive. Don't expect it to be cheap, but if you want a quality result, I mean, you don't go to the quack on the corner. You go to the expert at the regional hospital, right? So
the computer geeks at the Best Buy.
Pardon? Geek Squad at Best Buy is not where you go. No. I mean, they're great people and they can fix computers, but they're not forensic experts.
Okay. So I had a question. Can you indicate anything you found about the images? Have you been able to validate the images? Are there any indication in the images that it did indeed come from Mesa and that the images are from the same system?
Valid. Or
so the question was, can we validate the images from Mesa? We're using a software package called Encase. Encase is the law enforcement standard. It's what the courts accept for forensic data. When I get data collected with that software, it is placed in an integrity-controlled container. It doesn't mean you can't change the data. It means you can't change the data without our ability to detect it. And every time I open it in the software, it verifies the integrity of the data. It proves to me that the data hasn't been altered, and that's why the courts accept it. So all of the data we've got is in case files, and the integrity is verified. It's authentic data. So there are two things that I came here with an objective to do. And this is what I said when I first came in. We're looking at packet captures. We're looking at evidence from systems. We're looking at other information. I want to make sure that this information rises to the level of evidence that can be accepted in court. And there are two things that we have to do to make that happen. The first is called authentication. Who collected the data? Where did it come from? How was it collected? And the how is important because it needs to be collected with a court-approved and accepted method. So we've looked at that. That's been done here. Why was it collected? Under what authority? So there are lots of questions that have to be answered. But once they are, then we can declare that evidence to be authentic. The next thing needs to be happen is we need what's called a chain of custody. So I got the evidence. I passed it to her. She's got to sign a document saying that she received it from me, and I've got to sign an affidavit saying that I collected the evidence, I preserved it. This is how I guarantee it wasn't tampered with, and I testify to that under oath. Then when she passes it to the next lady, they have to exchange signatures and do the same thing. This is a chain of custody, and it's what's required. You had a question over here? Go ahead. To do a full forensic audit on voting machines, how long? I mean, how many? We would have to look at how many machines you have, how many locations, what the logistics of pulling them all together, and so forth. But it would, I would guess it would be, let's see, trying to do the math in my head, probably 70,000 or so to do a full audit of maybe one precinct's data. It's going to be fairly expensive, and it's not going to be one person. If you're doing multiple places, you would hire multiple teams so you get it done in a reasonable time, that sort of thing. And we can talk about this offline. It's time to wrap up. Let me pass this back. Thanks.
No, that was perfect. And so, again, the data forensics is one slice. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, we literally got some, brain surgeons and rocket scientists over next door. They're really intelligent folks. The data analysis is one piece. Then there's, what's critical is doing the hand count of the ballots and then comparing those batch files to the images. So I'm double talking, sorry. Batch files to the images that come from the machine, the reports, all the audit reports that come from the machines, counting the number of physical ballots. So a lot of lessons learned from Maricopa County were gleaned, and that will enable a lot of economy of effort moving forward. But some practices were learned just on, like John mentioned, chain of custody. Those ballots have to be maintained with that same chain of custody that John mentioned, and a lot of times they were not. So it's a detailed process, and a lot of it, especially handling all that, requires training, certification, background checks of the volunteers. So it's a complex process. But scoping just the data from Mesa County and the number, the size of those two images, what John said 70,000 would probably be a pretty cheap price to get. Say again? Per data set. So, Maricopa County is the fourth largest county in the country. And I think there were 300 and something terabytes of video and images. So that's monstrously scaled. A small county in, rural North Dakota would probably be much less. I know the Antrim County data was done for a lot less. It was 22 machines, so that was a township, a kind of equivalence or precinct. So hopefully that helps to scale. It's it's kind of like you got to eat an elephant. How big's the elephant first, and then how many bites is it going to take is a question.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mark?
I did have a comment on that. So. Also, it doesn't have to be a full forensic audit to be able to find something that's interesting or possibly an issue. We could do a smaller audit, like a medium-sized audit or an audit light even. So look for the low-hanging fruit that might do it at a fraction of the cost, but give you some very, very good feedback on the legitimacy of the system. And that'd be a way to go if you need to do something and you don't have the funds to do it. An audit light would get you there.
That's something that on the Secretary of State initiative that Mark Fincham sits on, and several others, folks from Michigan, Georgia, California, are working on, is a way to focus in on where they really need to look and use that economy of effort to target when and how far to go. So, yeah. Yes, sir. So those were server images, and I think John may have just walked out. So those are server images, and you want to hit?
Yeah, I believe those to be, from what I briefly saw up on the screen here, they were EMS server images. So it's the election management server, which houses the database that stores all of the votes. So it's kind of the heart of the system. All the other devices connect into it. And then even the reporting system is a separate unit usually that connects to that central database server, which is the EMS server, to get all of its information to do its reporting.
And again, so I think there were some questions about the significance of those two screens. So the Antrim County audit was a snapshot in time. That we know of after an election. The Maricopa County audit was a snapshot in time. So everything up until that time, we don't know exactly what happened, if the log files were deleted, if security log files were deleted like they were in Antrim, software could have been deleted. This is really the first time that we have a before and after shot.
Two snapshots, in fact.
Yeah, so we have two snapshots in rapid succession that Ms. Tina Peters was cognizant enough to get that snapshot before and then after the software, the server image was updated by Dominion. So it really gives us a before and after, and it sort of pins the tail right where it belongs. Anything else, Martin?
Yeah.
Thank you all very much,
yeah,
and I think we've got another presentation coming up, Joe and Mike. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody. Where you want me to sit? Over here? Yeah, that's fine. You can sit in the middle. Come.
Oh, no, sit here.
Hello, everybody. I'm here back to report about that article in the Gateway Pundit by Larry Johnson, alleged CIA guy that's been saying that we weren't going to, they've said that China thing, Mike Lindell said that is not true, or that he's given up on it. Not true. Big lie. Larry Johnson has done more to block this than anyone I've ever seen. His name kept coming up for the last 5 months for me. Every time you turn around, you hear that name. So when we talk about this, this hack and this attack by China through these Dominion machines, Joel Altman here, will you tell me you were the first one sued by Eric Coomer?
Yeah, so I was sued. I think most of you guys know I was sued by Eric Coomer of Dominion Voting Systems for defamation of character, for bringing to light the phone call that he was on with Antifa, where he said that not to worry about it, Trump's not going to win. So that's how I found myself in the middle of this. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to be involved in this. But I think that God puts you on a path, and you have to stay on it. So... you want me to go into this information?
Yeah. He's going to go over all the information now with you. I just wanted to tell you that Larry Johnson put in that article, we're going to call out every reporter, every person, all the lies. Right down, remember, the big lie is the big lie. And it has been for a long time. So yes, I stand firm on what I believe or what happened. I'm 100%. This was an attack by China. And this is it. The machines, he's going to talk to you a lot about Dominion here and tie it in. It's going to show you how it ties in directly to China. So, a great presentation. Thanks, Joel.
All right, so I'm going to walk you through some information. Thank you. I told you guys yesterday, if you were here before, that I am an introvert, not an extrovert. So I'm going to go take a nap after I talk to you guys. For me, I didn't dig into Dominion I didn't get into Dominion as far as what it was until after I got sued. I think that my only nexus involved in this deal was uncovering the information that I had related to Eric Coomer, and that that he was in a position where he could affect the election, and that from there, all of the other evidence that's come forward about Dominion, I've helped gather some of that information, but mostly because they came after my family, mostly because I had to resign as the CEO of my company, and there's been a great financial impact to my family. So I didn't want to be a part of it. But I'm a dog with a bone. So I'm the guy that if you come after me, I'm not likely to walk away from a fight. So I started uncovering information. Some of the information that you'll hear today is information that others have been able to collect. Some of it you may have seen or heard about, but what we want to do is put it all together so it makes a coherent story. So when we talk about Dominion being how we take Serbian technology with Chinese characteristics, nobody's going to come out and tell you that the Bank of China is funding anything. They're not going to do it, right? They're not going to come out and put a big board up and say that that's what's happened. But what we were able to do is we were able to back through, and by the way, this is publicly available information, so nobody can get mad at me. And I'll publish this later on my Telegram channel, so you can get access to it there. But what we're able to do is do some research on a company called Roaming Networks. So it was a relatively unknown company out of Serbia until 2013. They signed a value-added contract with Huawei Bank. So Huawei, just so you know, is the Bank of China. There'll be some information at the end of the slide that'll tell you a little bit more information about them. But they were built out ICT infrastructure and data centers, and they had done some of that information or some of that build for most of Serbia. So it's basically the infrastructure of Serbia. I said basically because it doesn't fully encapsulate it, but they have a great impact in Serbia. And it talks about their strategic partnerships and who the owner is. So it's run by an oligarch named Nenad Kovac, and so he was selected as the enterprise partner. Now, if you go to Roaming Networks, you'll see this information on their website. Some of this information, because I assume that after this presentation is done, some of that will come down off their website. So we did some research on Dominion Voting Systems. Dominion Voting Systems has a corporate office located in Serbia. We took a screenshot, the Google screenshot of the office that's there and one of the developers, which you'll find on the website. You'll notice that one of the legislative leaders inside of Serbia said, I know Dominion Voting Systems. It was back in November. They have an office here, right? And so Dominion very quickly started taking off all of the Serbian coders that they had on their website or on LinkedIn. The interesting thing about this is that we're having code built in Serbia for a system that's used in the United States that uses infrastructure that is actually built by or funded by China. And not just China, but the Bank of China. And I'm going to show you that I want to remind you of something about Huawei Bank, right, or Huawei, and that is it's restricted in the United States of doing business in the United States. You cannot do business with them in the United States from 2019. You can't do business with enterprise partners from 2019. So by proxy, they're doing business with the Bank of China through this kind of web of business relationships. So this is a slide that talks about becoming an enterprise partner, right? And you can kind of look, this is a slide that talks about when Huawei was added to the restricted list on May 16th of 2019. Many of you guys actually remember that, right? You remember that at all? Bank of China? Okay. This right here is the information related to Dominion Voting Systems using Roaming Networks. So over here on the far left, this is the references that were displayed by Roaming Networks on their site, stating that the implementation of pure flash storage solution on the primary data center for Dominion Voting Systems. So you have the company which is funded in partnership by Huawei of China that is actually building the data centers for Dominion Voting Systems, building the code in the office in Serbia. Remember what I talked to you about yesterday, which is deviations, right? A deviation should give you enough evidence that you just say the breach of the public trust has happened, we need to have an audit. And by the way, if there's nothing to hide, then why would we not have an audit? Why? So that's the first one, which shows that they have as a reference Dominion Voting. If you move to the right side, this is a picture taken by Mark Cook in Sacramento, California election warehouse, where you can see the Dominion Voting System hardware is coming directly from China, right? From China. And you would say, oh, lots of stuff is made in China. Okay. Well, then you have a bill of lading that came in, and you can't really read this, but this goes from a supplier in China directly to the Dominion Voting Systems office in McKinney, Texas, right? And then over here in this corner, you start talking about testing and approval of Dominion Voting Systems. This particular piece is actually talking about the similarities in testing of the equipment, the hardware between Smartmatic and Dominion voting systems. So they're using the same hardware. They just have a new badge put on it. One says Dominion Voting and one says Smartmatic. So look, at the end of the day, if you look behind you and you got a tail, everyone tells you got a tail, right? But you keep telling everyone you don't have a tail, but you got a tail hanging out there, you probably have a tail, right? The idea that, and I want to address this. So any questions about that? Any questions at all? What's yes? Yes. Yeah. Made by the same supplier, right? And by the way, this is all public information that you can go out there and do your research yourself. I mean, I would tell you that the news networks need to do the research. If you're a coder, do the research. If you're a legislator, you should send out your legislative aid. You just send people out and do the research. We should not be dealing with a system that's compromised. Even if you say that the risk of that compromise is 3%, 4%, 5%, that's too much to say that you're going to strip the voice of the American people away from electing our officials, both at the local level all the way up to the national level. Does that answer your question? Anybody else have a question? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. If you give me your information, I'll find a way to do the research for you. And again, I mean, we'll dig into it as far as we possibly can in order to get to that information. I know that ES&S, it's an incestuous world. We were able to build an entire graph of the people that worked for ES&S, HART, Dominion Voting Systems, Clear Ballot, Smartmatic, and they basically recycle people through the company. But one of the other things that's become very telling is that you have people that worked at Dominion Voting Systems that are now entering the political sphere and taking over election offices. And then, coincidentally enough, you have those election offices for the first time, one in Texas, that county, after hiring someone that worked for Dominion Voting Systems, went blue by accident, and they had ES&S. Any other questions? I get off the hook? Okay, so I want to address something with Gina Griswold. I want to do it right here. So Gina Griswold got on TV and talked about Tina Peters and talked about Mesa and said that it was bad actors, and then they had Matt Crane get up after Gina Griswold and explain that the real heroes are the other 63 counties that did not do a forensic imaging before and after the trusted build. And I can tell you right now that, I don't know if it's Dominion itself that is the bad actor, if they have people in their company that are bad actors, but if you have nothing to hide, you don't go in and do a trusted build that includes removing logs, changing code, right, and removing information and or components. Those aren't things that you do. The person that she had follow her up, and you guys are going to be a chance to see this, there'll be lots of articles out there. The person that she had follow up that on stage was Matt Crane. Matt Crane was the county clerk and recorder for Arapahoe County. He is now the head of the County Clerks Association, or County Clerks and Recorders Association, right? An organization, by the way, that has some money that comes in and out of that organization that is suspect at best. But here's another thing you need to know about Matt Crane, who came down hard on Tina Peters. His wife worked for Dominion for many, many years. Before that, she worked for, I think, Sequoia Voting Systems, right? 16 years in total. So the person standing on stage that's actually standing next to the Secretary of State, Gina Griswold, in Colorado, is complicit in the behavior of what's happening all across the country, saying that this is, again, the gold standard. If it's the gold standard, then you should do something when a public breach of trust has been done. If there's a breach of trust, it's really simple. The only way to restore that trust is to audit. Okay? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the election was stolen. You don't. It's not something you have to stand out there and say, hey, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. If you really want to get to the bottom of it, put the American people at ease, which now is nearly 70% on one side and 40% on the other. So that's all I got to say. Any other questions before I get off here? Yeah. Here you go.
Thank you for everything you're doing, by the way. I appreciate the information. Yesterday, you had a real quick statement you made that all these boxes communicate one to another.
I'm sorry, they all do what?
They all communicate one to another. Each voting machine, or however you want to
Called
describe
networking.
it, they're able to talk one to another freely, right?
Well, nothing's freely, but okay.
But at the same time, if that's actually real, that communication can happen, if we have one box that's fraudulent, then the entire system, all boxes are fraudulent because they touch one to another. Is that correct?
I mean, technically, I like where you're going with it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case.
So but even though we know that they can talk one to another, though, right?
Yes. You mean they're connected to the internet?
Right.
Yes.
And the boxes are intermingled, so I'm saying the spaghetti touches the spaghetti. It's all part of the same pot.
Yeah, so that's not how a network works. It depends on what the network infrastructure looks like.
Right.
Right. But yes, technically that can happen.
Right. So that was something they mentioned yesterday. They were talking about these can communicate one to another. And that right there should bother everybody. If that's even remotely possible, or they're able to backdoor through one machine, then that means they have access to network back through everything else.
Yeah, so I think that the important thing I think that that's a risk, right? But I think the important thing to know is that most Americans, most people are not coders, right? Would you agree with that? So if you're not a coder and you're relying on software, you're relying on a program, then at any point your mind deceives you. You wake up one day and something happens, something different happens. We talked about what Seth put up here, which is the mathematical probability. You'll listen to the Deep Rig, which is a documentary that was built by Patrick Byrne, and when you get into that, you see Bobby Piton stands up there and talks about probabilities on that as well, with male, female, and you, undefined. So if you just look at the basic facts, ignore the thousands of affidavits on the behavioral deviation, and you look at the basic facts, it's enough to push most of America to say that there's a breach of trust. So if we get too complicated, then they start saying, oh, this is nothing. If we get too specific, they'll say, well, we can disprove that. Well, I can disprove anything in a vacuum. But it's collectively, as you start looking at it, the mountains of evidence that exist, is too much to ignore. And all we're asking for as the American people is, we'll accept the truth. I will accept the truth. I'll even accept that maybe Eric Coomer got on that and it was hyperbolic, right? That he just wanted to puff his chest and have a little bit of him. I'd accept that if all of the other indicators did not show that we're dealing with a massive fraud on the American people. I'm a realist, right? I just want the truth. The only way we get to the truth is by doing audits to make sure that they can restore trust to the American people.
What Joe's talking about is indicators. You get one indicator, and that gives you 1 point of reference. But when you line up 100 indicators, so another senior Dominion vice president, his name is on the patents, was the tabulation center Dominion supervisor in Wayne County, Michigan, Nick Okonomakis.
Yes.
So
yeah,
a senior VP whose name's on the patents, I think he was a software engineer, software designer, was running the tabulation center. So again, coincidences are coincidences, but a whole bunch of coincidences all of a sudden become not a coincidence. Now, you just got to apply some common sense and look, as Joe said, the preponderance of this overwhelming evidence. And literally, the legal boxes of affidavits across the country that are, 5-6 feet high of stacked of legal filing boxes. And one more question, Joe.
Yeah.
Yes, yesterday afternoon, we had a really good presentation looking at some of the files, analyzing the files, and saying, what on earth are they doing here? But my question is, exactly which computer did those files come from? Did that come from the central count? Did that come from a sample computer that was used in the precincts? Was that the computer that prepared the equipment that was sent to the precincts? I'm wondering exactly which computer it was where those files were found.
So I'm going to answer that with a non-answer because I don't have enough information on what systems they imaged, but they were imaging the main EMS and the tabulation system. But
yes, and according to the election supervisor who was here, she observed those images. Those were the server images before and after the Dominion software update. So that was a server.
Yes.
The EMS server.
Yeah, they were the servers, 2 of them.
So the server is where, at a county level, you coordinate all the precinct information, and that server is the repository for all the audit functions, all the cast vote reports, the error reports, the adjudication reports, the logs, all the access logs, everything that happens in that little ecosystem goes through that server. So it's the central brain. Is that a way? A central brain for that county, and it's got everything that happened all throughout the county should be in that repository for that county right there. Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to address. Anybody have any questions? Any other questions? Any at all? None? Yes? Okay. So, hey, Phil, how much time do I have to stand up here and tell them about this stuff? What's my time limit? Sorry. I have 35 minutes. I have 35 minutes story time. Ready? They're not going to like me. I can do my deposition that I missed yesterday on the stage. What do you guys think about that? I'll answer any question you want, and we'll put it out there because I have nothing to hide. You have a question? I don't know. Phil walked off with it. Yeah, go ahead and yell. What do you have?
To what Jim was saying earlier, Duncan Buell, you know that name?
No.
Okay, some IT guy. He said that if you pull a thumb drive out of one machine and upload it to the county level machine, you can load them out. You can, if you pull a thumb drive or put a thumb drive into one machine that's not connected to the internet, and then you get the results from it, upload that thumb drive into the county-wide machine. If one machine has a malicious virus in it, or some kind of malware, you can now upload it to the entire county machine and corrupt the county, and the same thing again to the state. And I'm wondering if I want to check that. I heard the guy's a math PhD.
So that's not unique to voting systems. That's not unique to Dominion voting systems or any. If you have a corrupted information or a virus on any thumb drive and you put it in any computer, it can corrupt that computer, and anything that touches that would also be corrupted. Yes.
Okay, this is if it's in the one machine, and the thumb drive, it would jump to the thumb drive at that point.
It possibly could do that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a problem. We need to audit all the machines for that reason.
So I want to be really careful to speak truth, and the truth is that is a possibility, but we don't want to come up with possibilities. We want to eliminate all of the white noise and get down to the real facts, right? This is facts. Like, we know this is a fact that Dominion Voting Systems is in Serbia. We know that Huawei is the bank that is funding as a enterprise partner an organization in Serbia that's doing business, that built their data center in Serbia. We know the code was written in Serbia. You can see some of that, even the fingerprints of that when you do the imaging. Yeah, thank you. All right, so I have a little bit of time. Who wants to hear what I know? Anybody? All right. So I'm gonna sit down for a minute and tell you this. And if they pull me off, then they pull me off. Am I good? All right, I'm good. So we talked a little bit yesterday about the case, but I want you to know about all the other information surrounding that makes it improbable. If you're a legislator and you're wondering, how do I go back and convince them that I need them to do an audit? It's really simple. It's really simple. There are things that they never tried to explain away. And I say they because there is a radical element. If we take most of the Democrats, I think that about 80 to 90% of the entire U.S. is marginalized by these fringes, right? And so they get the loudest voice, they get the magnifying glass, they get to weaponize things like technology, they get to weaponize things like media. They use that in order to influence or to make people think a certain thing. But the reality of it is this. I was there on January 5th and January 6th in Washington. I was there. I was having conversations with people. I went to the State Department. I developed an entire, very simple diagram of how the cons, I call them little cons and big cons, exist. I did all of that by stacking the information that was publicly available through Dominion, and then I just used simple math. I didn't even have to use high-level math. I used the third grader math, right? And I showed how that we have to look at deviations. We have to look at ways in which they violate law. We have to look at ways in which they have behavioral deviations. And I'll use Georgia as an example. We know that we had video of somebody putting ballots through the system multiple times. When they went to go do an audit of those images, what did they discover? They discovered that there was ballots that were identical in different batches. That happened. That would happen 9 months later, but have they said anything about it? Has the media even let that get out? No. We know that there was a shredder truck that showed up before January 20th in Georgia. We know that for a fact, right? I have pictures of somebody hiding in a bush, taking pictures of it being surrounded by FBI agents and other people from the government. So they knew that there was a problem and that there was a shredder truck filled with ballots, and you were told nothing. We know that they, in the main center, the arena, they said that there was a main water leak. It was parroted across the mainstream media. That was parroted. Everything that I'm telling you is something you can go do your own research on. It turned out to be a leaky toilet. They shut down an arena for a leaky toilet. Deviation of behavior. All we have to do is look at the basic deviations from state to state. It doesn't take a mathematician. It doesn't take Dr. Frank or Seth or Bobby Piton or any of those people to understand that these things are dishonest acts. And yet they tell us it's the gold standard. It's the safest election in U.S. history. You can also take the people that stood up against the election and what they're doing today. Some of them work for the same organizations that are funded by Soros and other aristocratic elites. This isn't, again, me making it up. It's very simple to see. So as we go state by state and we look at the probabilities of things happening and then we examine all the affidavits, I bet you there's thousands of affidavits across this country that went into a box, filled it, that no one has taken the time to go back and read. No one has taken the time to go back and do the research in their own states. As legislators, I would call those people to testify. I would call those people in and say, tell me what you know. But they haven't done that. And the media, instead of understanding the weight of those affidavits, if you sign an affidavit under penalty of perjury, you could spend 5 years in prison for lying. I signed an affidavit, so I could spend 5 years in jail for lying. But guess what? I didn't lie. The truth is a great equalizer. And so you have all of these people. You have thousands of people that were your eyes and ears as legislators, but you have to be willing to do the hard work. You have to be willing to stand in the gap and say, listen, there was a deviation in our state, in our county, in our area of behavior, law, code. And if there's a deviation of code, if there's a deviation of a build for Dominion in one state and it comes out like it did in Antrim County and now you have Mesa County, that those were compromised systems and that they erased information that by federal law you have to keep for 22 months, that should be the end of the conversation. There shouldn't be a debate about it. We spend all of this time going back and forth about, well, did this happen and this happen? And we get to the transaction and we don't look at it holistically as, listen, I'm not going to let my daughter date a serial killer. And you say, well, he seems like a nice guy. The fact that he's a serial killer, he's not going to let him date your daughter. Why are we letting our election system get run by systems that are foreign systems? Well, listen, I'm going to tell you what I think is the answer. The answer is and always has been the voice of the American people. Yeah, we keep telling everyone there's nothing we can do about it. We haven't learned the power of the word no. It's really simple. Just no. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about vaccines. No, it's my choice. I'm not getting a vaccine. No, I'm not using Dominion voting systems. No, you can just say no. And collectively, the people have a powerful voice, but you can't get people to step out there because we always seem to eat our own. This is not a difficult problem to fix. It's not. And look, I am a Christian conservative, right, from the south side of heaven, right? So I've never seen a fight I didn't like. I've never been a person that lived my life in fear. The Bible says 365 times it says, fear not. Yet we hide in our basements and we allow them to create and dictate and weaponize things against us as people, right? All we have to do is step out. All we have to do is recognize the sacrifice that is necessary and find our courage. And these legislators, even if you're a rhino, even if you're on the left, they align with an ideology that moves up to the head of the snake. But where's the head of the snake? And if you're a legislator on the left, if you're a legislator on the right, why can't you think for yourself? Why can't you go back to your community, ask your community what they want? And when they tell you, I don't want Dominion voting systems, then you go back and you vote against it. If they go back and say, I don't want ES&S, then you go back and you advocate for a system that restores constitutional integrity to your community. What's that? Paper ballots. I don't know if that's the answer going forward just because of the sheer number of people in this country. But we put a man in space 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It certainly would mean that somewhere along the line we could figure out a better system. All right. Are you a legislator? All right. All right. I'm one of the people, so you can stand up. I'm sorry? You want to ask a question? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Jeff. I'm from Georgia. My name is Jeff, and I'm from Georgia. And we've been here for 3 days.
You're from that state.
And I have to leave, the most corrupt state in the nation.
I
know we have
that.
stiff competition, but we got it, okay? And I've been here, and we've heard the cyber experts. We've heard the legislators speak. But we the people, okay, all you legislators out there, we elect you, and our state, all of our state constitutions say that you're our servants and you're our trustees, and you're sworn to the trust indenture of our state constitutions to do the will of the people. The government was created by the people, not for the will of the government, but for the will of the people. And I have a social media presence. I have contacts with thousands of people that feel like our voices have been taken, our voices have been stolen. There's no remedy. There's nothing they can do. And most of them don't trust anybody in the executive offices in our states anymore. And we're looking to you as our state legislators, our representatives, to represent us. Yeah. Okay? We're not asking you to let us have to find the fraud and then show it to you. We're asking you to audit your employees and prove to us that they did their job right. Okay? We don't need all this data. We just need you to make your employees, like any other boss, any other manager of any other company, to make your employees show the owner of the company, which is the people, that they did their job right. And if they didn't, replace them with somebody who will.
Yeah.
We've lost our voice, and we're looking to you to be the heroes of this story. Please serve the people. Ask the people of your state what they want, and then do what they ask you to do. Please.
Thank you. Thank you for it there. Okay, so I will tell you this. We let the media use TikTok, the 15-second soundbite, in order to tell us what the reality of it is. So I can tell you that you can take any number of things, and they're going to pick the things that they think they can discredit, and they're not going to let you concentrate on the rest of it. That's why I just want you to simplify it. If you're a legislator, simplify it. Keep it simple, stupid. There's a reason why way back in the day they taught you that, right? Because it's very simple. If you look at the deviations, if there's a deviation, then there's a problem. The breach and the trust of the people has been breached. You have to do an audit. If people are coming to you and telling you to do an audit and you're saying it costs too much, again, I'll go back to the $1.2 trillion where less than 5% of that money actually goes towards infrastructure. And if you start digging into it and stop with the scratch the surface, it won't be very difficult for you to figure out that we can get rid of entitlements and get rid of a lot of other things and spend the money that's necessary to make sure that we can restore trust of the American people. So I think I have to talk for a few more minutes. So do you guys want to hear about Dominion? You want to hear about it? All right. No? I can go? All right. Wrap it up. Hey, listen, I think courage is more infectious than fear. I'm really glad they're pulling me off the stage. I'm going to go take a nap. I just one last thing I will say to you, and that is God is at the wheel. We know how it ends, and And I think that it's all up and incumbent to us. If you don't do anything else, you can do one thing, and that's pray for our nation, pray for Mike Lindell, and pray for all the other people that are standing up and having courage, because the American people are worth it. Thank you.
All right, how's everyone doing? Can you hear me? All right. I'm going to attempt to provide you with some clarity. We've heard a lot of evidence over the past 3 days. It's overwhelming. So one way that we can make things more simple is through the use of a parable. Cell number 2. A parable is a simple truth cast alongside something else to illustrate a greater truth. All right, let's say that one more time. A simple truth cast alongside something else to illustrate a greater truth. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to dive in. I am a professor of law here today. I might only be a professor of law for another 3 days, depending on how the university situation shakes up and who watches this. I refuse to take the jab. I refuse to take the experimental vaccines. I'm not wearing a mask. And unfortunately, my job requires me to do all three or be subject to invasive testing. So we'll see what happens. But before I was a professor, I was a long-time prosecutor. And we're going to talk about a case that I tried that will serve as the simple truth, the parable. And we're going to start comparing what I went through with what we're all going through together as the American people. Let's look at exhibit marker 1. Back in 2011, curiously enough, around November 3rd, in Alamogordo, New Mexico, someone called in and reported a torched vehicle. That's all we had. Kind of confusing. Most vehicles you just don't find on the side of the road looking like that. We agree? So it was curious. That was the start of a mystery. There's something else that was curious that happened on November 3rd of 2020. Let's take a look at this next video.
Election workers in Allegheny County are back to work after pausing counting overnight. Butler County had to press pause on counting ballots. Nevada, meanwhile, has stopped counting votes until 9 a.m. on Thursday.
A water pipe has broken in State Farm Arena. State Farm Arena is where they were counting the absentee ballots of Georgia's most populous county. And now the tabulation has stopped.
It's Allegheny, which is Pittsburgh, but also Beaver, part of our county, Butler and Westmoreland. They've all stopped counting for the night. They've gone to bed. They begin the process at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Good morning, Heather. They did have to press pause overnight. They will be back in a few short hours, expected to resume counting around 8:30 this morning.
Fulton County is now going to stop counting at 10:30 p.m. and will resume their count at tomorrow morning.
They basically stopped counting tonight. They're going to start counting again in a few hours. It's already tomorrow morning, right?
The election workers stopped counting those mail-in ballots at 10 o'clock. They will be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m.
And Nevada says it stopped counting the votes yesterday, election day. But they don't say why. Why did you stop counting?
Here's where it gets really bizarre. At Fulton County, most populous county, it is Atlanta, they just stopped counting at 10:30 p.m. They stopped counting their absentee ballots. They said they'd pick it up in the morning.
But the counting in one of that state's biggest counties has stopped. Mike Armstrong is in Pennsylvania. Mike, we're talking about Allegheny County. That's the area around Pittsburgh. What's happening?
All right, so for the American people, much like there was a burning car for me, it didn't make sense. Did that make sense to you? Here begins the mystery, right? Here comes the investigation. Now, behind exhibit marker number 2, we found out that inside that burning vehicle was a human body. Face down, destroyed. So now we've got something more. We've got a possible murder, foul play. We don't know yet. Let's go over to the next cell.
At each of the 5 desks,
And we labeled the first one here, kind of focused on her. She's wearing a purple top, desk one. This is at 4x speed, so we don't have to sit there and watch, it in a slower speed. But you can see that this lady is taking the same stack of ballots. And once she runs them through the scanner, there she goes. She sticks them back in and runs them a second time and a third time. And then the lady to her right, wearing the yellow top, we've got a second video that shows that she did the same thing with a stack of ballots on her desk. And so there's ballot scan.
So let's talk about that parable. I once had a burning car. I've got a body inside that burning car. You had a November 3rd, what the hell is happening moment. And then you have something like this where somebody's handling something else, something sacred. We have another corpse. It was the American people's vote. And they handled that vote in an unsacred way, rescanning our votes, maybe, time after time after time. Everyone follow me? Let's go ahead and go open up the next cell. Look at this happy family. This is in a Chinese restaurant in a little town that I live. Look how happy they are. We've got people holding their children. Looks like someone's got a baby on the way. There's some smiles here. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at a family that you wouldn't know one thing about unless you knew what I knew about them. This is a picture of the AZ boys. This is a drug trafficking organization right here. That's Bob Chavez. That's Angela Catt. This is their trigger man, Matthias Loza. That's Joey Jr. being groomed to kill people. This is Richard Valdez, that gentleman that was in the car, face down, that you saw his skull. That's what it belongs to. He's holding his children. That's Joe Chavez. That's his bride, Tracy Garrison. And that's Priscilla, who is the wife of Richard. Now we've got suspects, right? Or it seems like we're starting to develop some evidence to start connecting the dots. Next screen, please. So the parable thickens. We've got two different crime families here, folks. Crime family number one is the AZ boys. Now, you need to understand something about drug trafficking organizations. They're regional. They're all over the country, but they're regional. But they usually answer to a cartel. So you've got the high view and you've got the grunt labor. They're all making money, trafficking their drugs. But we have another type of trafficking organization. It's a vote trafficking organization. And you'll have your ground thugs. You'll have various players. And you're going to have some people that may be less culpable than others. When I showed you that picture of the original crime family, not all of them were equally culpable. And you're going to find out if we got a conviction and if we had some sentencing, how they were treated. That's John Paulos. We've got Eric Coomer. We've got Adrian Fontes. We've got the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. So in one case, we have the AZ boys. In the other case, we have the Arizona Maricopa Board of Supervisors trafficking our votes. Let's go ahead and talk about the cartel just one second. Because again, over here, we answer to a cartel in the drug trafficking world. The vote traffickers also work for a cartel, but it's an election cartel. Play the video.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Folks, we got a lot of work to do. I don't only need you to get me elected, I need you once I'm elected.
It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's It's about who gets to count.
You can condemn them by their very words. We're not making them up. Let their words speak for themselves. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what I want to show you. Think local drug trafficking organizations and also from the global view. So we start off here with Maricopa County, vote trafficking. We've got some vote trafficking going on in Fulton County. Where else are we headed? Oh, looks like we're heading to Philadelphia. We had some major vote trafficking there. Come over here to, is that Michigan? Is that Wayne County? I think we had some vote trafficking there. Head over to Wisconsin, and you're starting to see all of these different vote trafficking organizations around the globe, but they answer to someone else. China. And after we just heard from Mr. Altman about the components with Huawei, it makes sense, doesn't it? Well, if it makes sense, it's probably true. Next slide. Okay, now this is one of Captain Keshel's heat maps. You think about how effective these vote trafficking operations are. There's your picture. The green area, if this was the drug analogy, you got drug dealers, even in Middle America. They're not necessarily vote trafficking organizations. So there's still bad stuff that happens in the green. But when you start looking at those key counties in those key states that committed the murder. Now, murder's a little bit different. You have to understand, drug traffickers aren't in the business of murdering. Drug traffickers are in the business of selling their product and becoming wealthy. And they'll commit underlying crimes to preserve the organization. They'll money launder. They'll commit fraud. And yes, they will kill people to ensure that the organization survives. Vote trafficking, it's the same thing. You're going to see paper trails, money laundering, fraud. And yes, in some respects, even murder. We'll get there. All right, so this is the first crime family. But why did Richard Valdez die? Why was he murdered? He's in the picture. He's part of the family. Because he was a liability. He was a liability. They couldn't control him. You see, he was an addict. He was weak. And at some point, he was executed by this gentleman right here, Matthias Loza, who is now rotting behind bars because we've caught him and convicted him for at least 3 murders. There's more, but he won't be coming out anytime soon. Let's go ahead and close that out. Where did this happen? The neighborhood bar and grill. We've all been there. Applebee's. He goes in there, he says, look, I don't think I'm getting enough respect. I want my drugs. And he became a liability. Now, you saw that family picture. Everyone's holding kids. This is family. They snuffed him out. I'll tell you how later. But let's talk about some stuff that we've got here. Next slide. This is an actual transcript from the case where they're hunting for they're hunting for Richard Valdez, the one that was in the corpse. Bob, Joey's a young killer, referring to Joey Jr. Smoking them real young. Good Lord. It's better that you learn young like this. You know what I mean? That way when you get old like me, you'll become a pro. Yeah. Pop, pop, pop. Popping those mothers left and right. You don't get caught. It's just that those mothers get scared, and they start thinking their time is up and it's time to get popped for it, What a loving family. They're driving around a car looking for this man because he disrespected them at Applebee's. Next transcript. Now, there's some females in that picture. And before they go out a second time, Angie, who's married to Bob Chavez, says, as long as there's mud on your license plate and there's mud all over the truck, so if you're smart, go throw mud on it so they can't read your license plate. And they go on further, and they're saying, burn that mother, you know what, for acting like a moron. She's cheering them on. Next transcript. And always take a pair of gloves, mijo. Why? Because when you're disposing the body, you don't want to be caught. Have those gloves on. And then they're talking, watch this mother's head go pop. This hasn't happened yet, but you see the intent of the DTO about to commit its murder. Next slide. Now let's talk about the second crime family. What could have provoked the election cartel and the vote trafficking organizations to commit the murder of the American people's vote? What's behind this exhibit?
I call President Obama and Hillary Clinton the founders of ISIS. They're the founders. You get the MVP award. ISIS will hand her the most valuable player award. Her only competition is Barack Obama between the two.
Now, Sleepy Joe would say the unemployment rate in the great state of Ohio. No, you're in South Carolina. Joe, you're in South. They come up with you. Ever see the guy that no, it's South Carolina. It's not Ohio. Okay. And he goes, all right, Iowa. Did you say Iowa? No.
Pocahontas. Well, no, she's. Look, she is.
Very offensive.
You tell me. I'm sorry about that. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Adam Schiff's got the smallest, thinnest neck I've ever seen. But I think Jeb is a nice person. He's very low energy. I'm not used to that kind of a person. Crooked Hillary Clinton. Well, we have some of the dumbest leaders in the world. Give me one. You would have loved not to have contributed to the Clinton Foundation, as an example. But CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. We're going to renegotiate NAFTA. Probably the worst trade deal ever agreed to, signed in the history of the world.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Let's revisit the parable. They could not control Donald Trump. He was a liability for the vote trafficking organization. He was a liability for the election cartel. Connect the dots. Now, we've got a flag over here, the obscured flag. Let's click on that and see what the symbolism here is. Trump tweets about coronavirus using the term Chinese virus. He didn't just upset the election cartel here in the United States, the cartels worldwide. We have a great president. A great president. He looked the vote traffickers in the eye, and he knew exactly what they were. He looked at the election cartel members in the eye, and he knew exactly what they were. So a lot of you are going, well, we want the end of this story. We want the end of this saga. Just know that when I was prosecuting drug traffickers, murderers, thieves, liars, we knew who they were, and they all thought they were going to get away with it. We'll see if they did. Next, well, before we do that, just want to revisit again, we've got ourselves, we don't want to forget about the vote trafficking family, but there's certain pieces of evidence that came to light where we went and were able to connect the dots. Sometimes the election cartel will signal to the vote trafficking organizations how things are going to happen. So let's hear from one of their chief lieutenants, Bernie Sanders.
Could well be that at 10 o'clock on election night, Trump is winning in Michigan, he's winning in Pennsylvania, he's winning in Wisconsin, and he gets on the television, he says, "Thank you, Americans, for re-electing me. It's all over. Have a good day." But then the next day and the day following, all of those mail-in ballots start getting counted, and it turns out that Biden has won those states. At which point Trump says, "See, I told you the whole thing was fraudulent. I told you those mail-in ballots were crooked."
Now, Bernie just told you exactly what was going to happen, down to the state. They had the plan, they knew what they were going to do, and they had their lieutenants in that vote trafficking organization at the local level in those strategic counties. Next image, please. Like any investigation, we have to start sifting through the evidence. I had to start sifting through the muck and the mire. And as you all have learned over the past 3 days, we've had people sifting through the evidence to present a case, and we're going to get there. Next image. Or video. Go ahead and play it.
We have a whole group of lawyers who are going out to every voter registration physician in the states, the secretaries of state, making sure that they, in fact, have a game plan as to how they're going to take place. We are going to push what the Democrats in the House did. They need to allow for voting in place, to have not only voting by mail, but also voting in place by providing the necessary equipment for social distancing, sanitation. We've 10,000 people have volunteered. We're going to try to get them plugged in as poll workers, not for us, but running the mechanisms in the states that they work for the state operations. Because last time, I don't want this excuse that the reason why we closed down, I'm making the number up, there are 30 polling places in a predominantly minority neighborhood, but now there's only 5 because we don't have enough poll workers. So we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that we are making contact with every governor and every person in charge of the electoral process in their states.
Pure lies, pure propaganda, every step of the way. But they told you what they were going to do, but we were asleep. We believed the snake news back there. Have you woken up yet? Have you? This room has. You don't understand, folks. We have been inundated with propaganda through our screens, through the choice media corporations, the legacy media, and we have been fried. And we accept this garbage as if it's the truth. That man, the resident-in-chief, who had rallies of 20 people, socially distanced, 6 feet, that's the most popular president. Did you just hear how he's speaking? He's deranged and demented. That's a blessing, folks, because God likes to expose the wicked and make fools of them, and it's going to happen. Now let's talk about the crime. We've got our parable. We've got the transcript here. Again, let's revisit that. The vote trafficking organizations talking about pop, pop, pop.